Welcome,
Welcome.
Housewives of True Crime.
Long time no see. Just
Oh.
kidding. Just saw you at CrimeCon.
It was so good, you guys. I know we talked about it on our Patreon and our bonus content. But if you don't listen, which you should, but if you don't, we'll tell you here. It is a fascinating time. So you get to really learn more about cases, about how they research and how they do investigation, which is really cool. And then you get to meet people like us, which is even cooler.
And some even cooler people.
Some even cooler.
Like Josh Makowitz from Dateline, Nancy Grace, etc.
It's true. So next year it's in September, like September 4th, 5th, somewhere around there. And it's going to be in Denver. So we hope to see you there. Start saving now. Got like a lot of time.
Check it out. Okay, so I got back from it and everything looked like perfect in
Roses
my house when I walked
butterflies.
in. You know, my husband is like, yeah, easy breezy, no problem dealing with the last week of school shenanigans. Let me tell you, I am finding stuff hidden in every nook and damn cranny of this house. I just found the children's suitcases shoved in their closets, still packed from 2 weeks ago. Oh my gosh. Refrigerator full of takeout boxes because he could not. Well, you know, I don't expect him to unpack. I expect him to ask the children to do so when he sees the suitcases in there and then know that you need to verify. Right? But no, he's not going to do that. He didn't cook for them, I don't think, a single time. I don't even think there was toast made in this house because it was all to-go boxes.
Yeah, well.
And, you know, I told you he nearly died.
Yes. So you need to tell everybody how he nearly died because that story is bananas, you guys.
My husband pulled his back. His back went out. Whatever. I mean, I don't have back problems. I don't know. Whatever they say, okay? He doesn't really, but once in a while, it's something he bitches about. Okay, so he decides he's going to sit in the hot tub. Good idea. Does that. It's late in the evening. Children are deep into video game playing, TV watching, etc. So from the hot tub, he goes into our side yard, and we have one of those inverters, I believe they call them, those hanging upside downy things. Okay.
Yes.
He gets himself all locked and loaded. You got to strap in. I mean, the thing, I've never even done it for a second. It scares the shit out of me, right? So, I don't want any part of hanging.
My uncle used to do this in the 80s. Is this like it's from the 80s kind of thing?
Yeah, I think it is. I think he acquired this piece of business that we have moved from house to house at like a garage sale.
Yeah.
He thinks it stretches his spine.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh my God. Okay.
And he finds it useful. So he gets himself all hooked up and is hanging upside down and then realizes he can't get himself out. And the children, he's yelling and screaming, and the neighbors do not hear him.
No, they hear him. They hear him, Gretchen. No one's coming to help.
Our neighbors are elderly, maybe a little hard of hearing. I don't know. And the children, they're not coming for him. They're not checking on him. So he gets a little, for you kids, MacGyver-ish. I mean, I should say for you adults, because I feel like the kids don't know who MacGyver is, but no, MacGyver is this guy who used to be able to fix everything on the television, which he was on the television in the 80s, and our story takes place in the 80s, so it kind of ties in. Anywho, he fashions his way out of the inverter after being hung upside down for like 30 minutes by taking off his board shorts and getting the string. He had to like shred his board shorts to pieces, so he's naked. Anywho, somehow using the string, I don't know what he did, rigged himself up, whatever, Then he has to, of course, the doors are locked. And so he has to go around the front naked to get back in the house. Then he calls me. I'm at CrimeCon. I'm like, what you doing calling me, fool? I'll talk to you when I get home. Okay? Love you. Mean it. I'm busy. He's like, I almost died. I just almost died. I was like, okay, seriously.
He did call her and say that. And she's like, okay, I have to go. I have somebody right here talking to me. And I'm like, what's up? And she's like, well, I guess Jeremiah almost died. And then when she really told me the story,
but that like, shows how dedicated I am to the con.
It's true. You are really dedicated.
I mean, cannot leave the man alone. Cannot leave him alone. You know, a friend of mine brought up a really good point, though. She said, if it was one of us, that would have never happened. Okay, leave it to a man, because we would have never done that without having our phone right next to us.
Well, I did think about that, but yes, no, right? We would never, ever do that. Ever.
Never.
I don't think I would get in that hanging thing.
First of all, I'm not really into hanging upside down anyways. I feel like it makes your face saggy.
Totally. Don't do it. Don't do it.
You know what I mean?
I 100% know what you mean. Although maybe it doesn't. Maybe it actually like would pull it up because if you're upside down, gravity's pulling it down. I don't know. It's actually maybe a good thing. Maybe
well, that's my favorite.
Okay, takes 80s party today, huh? We're doing the 80s back to when we were.
Yeah, we're totally in a party in the 80s. Yeah, let's get to it. Okay, Tab. This case is brought to us by listener suggestion by Dawn. It all goes down in Southern California in the 1980s. Let me tell you, it went down in the 80s in Southern California. I am talking about big hair, tanning beds, cocaine, exotic pets were still like legal-ish. Sounds like I am describing Joe Exotic's dream decade. Well, just to refresh everyone's Tiger King knowledge we all gained during COVID, in the 80s, Joe was in his 20s and just getting his party started somewhere in Oklahoma, while back here in Southern California, Horace McKenna already had his party well established.
Did he have the pythons too?
He did. You know it, girl. You know it. Okay. Yeah. Horace's nickname was Big Mac. And that was because, Tab, he was real big. 6'6" and over 300 pounds. He is described frequently as looking like Mr. Clean. He was into bodybuilding, so he had the Mr. Clean physique. But unlike Mr. Clean, he did have hair.
Okay.
Actually, it was transplants. And I read he was real sensitive about them. Well, you know, men and their hair, it's such a thing.
It's such a thing, man.
Oh my gosh. Fred won't even let me talk about the thinning situation he has going on. And hello, we have a 5 crimes magical potion that could help him out.
Scandalous scalp, you guys. And it works on men
It really does thicken your hair. Yes. So true story. Also, you know what? He won't deal with the thinning hair situation, but he asked me about dyeing his hair since he's going gray.
And you're like, I can help you with both, okay?
Well, I'm not letting him dye his hair. No, he needs to age. It's not fair that he weighs the same amount as he did when I met him 20 years ago.
Okay, Miss Botox. Okay.
Exactly. I want to look, I don't like to mention this, but I am a little older than the husband. So I feel like I should look younger at some point. He should get old and I should continue Botox.
You should continue.
I'll be his trophy wife eventually. Okay? But he has to age to make that happen. So no hair dye for Fred. Okay, well.
I'm sure he'll actually appreciate you telling the world that he
doesn't listen. He does not listen. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Anyways, Tab, back to the 80s. In 1989, Big Mac, who had acquired his wealth in an unconventional entrepreneurial fashion that I will get into in a minute was living large on his 40-acre ranch in Brea, California. He was a big fan of the Gone with the Wind movie, and so he named the ranch Terra, which I guess is a name of the plantation or something in the movie. I wouldn't know because I've never seen it.
I don't know either.
I don't know. I just know that whole, like, frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn, right? Okay, well, Big Mac's Terra Ranch featured a 3,000 square foot Spanish style home, but additionally, there were stables for over a dozen fancy horses and accommodations for a tiger, a panther, a giant python, and a bunch of other snakes, as well as 2 monkeys that Mac liked to have dressed in tuxedos.
Okay.
It was a lot, yeah.
That's a lot.
Brea is in northern Orange County, and it was about an hour commute to Mac's businesses. Mac's had a limo and a driver to transport him to and fro. So glorious, right? Now, I feel like everybody just goes back and forth in Escalades. Like, you hardly ever
That's
see
what they
limos.
like call limos now.
Yeah. Mac's businesses included owning some apartments and a gym in El Segundo, which I'm sure is very convenient for a bodybuilder like himself. Additionally, he owned 5 strip clubs in the Los Angeles area. Well, sort of. This is the unconventional part. Legally speaking, he didn't actually own them because he had a bit of a criminal record, which prohibited him from having the license. So he had an agreement of sorts, a 70-30 split in Mac's favor with one Mike Woods, who acted as the legal owner for his 30%, while Mac kind of ran them all as the front man for his 70%. Mac and Mike met back in the day when, get this, they were both California Highway Patrol officers on motorcycles.
Okay.
The CHP was so much hotter in the 80s, I think. Remember Chips?
Yeah, but it's so funny that he goes from like that to like owning strip clubs. Doesn't, well, I don't know. I dated a firefighter that loved the strip clubs. So maybe all of that goes hand in hand somehow.
Yeah. I think now motorcycle cops, tell me if I'm wrong, have kind of lost their hotness association. At least for me. I don't correlate hotness anymore now.
With a cop?
Not with a motorcycle cop. Now I correlate like a sneaky cop that's going to give me a ticket.
Oh my God, only because you got pulled over. But no, I got pulled over by a
Well,
real hot cop.
there's always a motorcycle cop at my kid's school in the carpool lane. And I always get a little pin in my stomach because once in a while you see them pulling over a parent during drop off. And I mean, it's like the shame if you get a ticket in front of the school, you know?
No,
everybody gonna be talking.
I like a man in uniform. I'm going to the Fort Worth Sheriff's Office today.
Oh, I know. I'm just saying it's, yeah, okay.
Hot.
You know, I like them. I find UPS drivers hot, but I like a uniform.
Oh my God.
I'm just saying.
She also finds Josh Makowitz hot.
True story. Yeah. I like a deep voice, looking sharp in a tux or in a suit. I just think that, you know, when that Chip show was on in the 80s, I mean, everybody was all about it.
Right.
Yeah. While Big Mac was still an officer, he had a side hustle. He played poker. And he made so much money doing so that he decided to invest in strip clubs. It was such a lucrative investment that he retired from the CHP after just a couple of years. But now that he was no longer a lawman, I guess he felt like breaking it by committing the crime of counterfeiting. I don't know much about the circumstances that led him to get involved with the counterfeitation, but I can report he was convicted for it and then did 4 years in the clink for a probation violation following his conviction. When he got out, he hooked back up with his old CHP buddy, Mike Wood, who had a clean record, and made the deal where Mike was the front man and Mac was pretty much running the show. Business arrangement ended up not being super copacetic, according to former employees. You basically had to pick a side, Team Mac or Team Mike Woods. There was a battle of egos exerted, and Mac was definitely the dominant. He was just so intimidating with his huge stature, as opposed to Mike Woods, who's just kind of an average Joe.
Mm-hmm.
According to Big Mac's former fiancée, Terry, who worked at the clubs, she says she saw Mac slap Mike across the face.
What?
Yeah, Terry has a whole lot of stories about Big Mac. Some are good and some not so good. She talks about how fun he was. He loved the movies and Disneyland. He could be really charming and had a real love of animals. But that love also included her not being able to seek medical attention after a tiger painfully punctured her skin through the muscle because Max said the tiger wasn't registered, and so she couldn't go to the hospital.
Oh my God.
That's, yeah,
Bad.
bad, right? And, besides, he said it was her fault because she was wearing jeans after she had been instructed not to. Or she wasn't wearing jeans after she had been instructed not to.
I'm sorry. Like, jeans or no jeans, it's not going to matter with the
Puncture
tiger.
wound, I'm going to the hospital.
Yeah, hello.
It could get infected with tiger claw funk. Yeah.
Tiger claw funk.
That's not love. Yeah. Well, whatever. Okay, so the way she describes Mac, he was a pretty classic abuser. Very controlling, lots of rules. She had chores every day, had to be home before him, had to make him steak and rice for dinner. That's all he ate. She also mentions his temper, which in her words resulted in him stomping on her and slapping her around. I'm sure all the cocaine and steroids that she mentions he was using did not curb his demeanor.
Right.
When Terry and Mac got involved, he was divorcing a woman named Sherry that he had been married to for 9 years. I found an old LA Times article that referenced him being physically abusive to Sherry. Mac's only child, his son from his first wife, named Big Mike, says baloney. He says that the woman Sherry was cold and he didn't know why it took his dad so long to divorce her. He says his daddy was gentle as a kitten. The way Mike describes his father is very ideal. He says he was just a big kid. They rode horses and goofed off all the time. But I would speculate there was likely a side of his father that he kept from his son. He did definitely keep a lot of his business dealings from him. And his son kind of acknowledged this. He said he had to learn the ins and outs of the business dealings pretty immediately when he was 23 and received a call in 1989 that his father was killed outside of the gate at his beloved ranch in Brea. At 12:30 p.m., Mac's limo approached the gate and it was showered in a hail of gunfire. The limo driver was miraculously spared and able to drive to the house and call 911 when the gate opened. He was not able to identify anyone given it was dark and, so shocking. But it was clear the gunfire was intended for Mac, aimed at the back of the limo. Investigators set out to investigate Mac's business dealings and associates. For obvious reasons, it looks like a contract hit, so that usually means you'll find your suspects when you follow the money. They learned about Big Mac's ownership arrangements with the strip clubs. Now, let me tell you, one of the clubs that Mac owned was none other than the Jet Strip, which is next to LAX and still open. They have a fully nude situation, and so apparently BYOB is permitted, which I was not aware is a thing. But according to the interweb, this is a thing in a lot of strip clubs, which makes sense, I guess, because they want you all liquored up.
Well, okay, so I remember the spearmint rhino is all nude, no alcohol.
Right. But did you know you could bring in your own?
No.
Yeah.
Okay. Makes sense, though. It's kind of like at the Italian restaurant down the road. I can
Y-
bring my own
you
alcohol
can bring your
also
own.
because they don't
Okay.
have the license.
They just want you there.
Right.
Yeah. So also, in case you're curious, the sign out in front of the jet strip looks the same as it did in the 80s, which I actually appreciate. Also, according to the interweb, it is rated one of the friendliest stripping establishments in the LAX area, which I appreciate as well. But back in 1989, when investigators started asking around the clubs, they didn't get too many friendly responses. Given the nature of the violent murder of Mac, the employees and clientele thought it best to just keep their thoughts to themselves because, they didn't want to be next.
Right.
So even though they suspected early on that Mac's business partner, Mike Woods, was probably motivated to get rid of Mac so he could collect all the profits and not have to deal with Mac's temperamental nature, they couldn't prove it. Additionally, there wasn't exactly a shortage of suspects who could have been motivated to off Mac. There was a whole thing about another club owner named Jimmy Casino, who Mac had supposedly attempted to purchase his club that he owned in Santa Ana, and Jimmy ended up dead and the club burned down. Messy stuff. And there were reports written that Mac was involved in narcotics and prostitution rings and had ties to organized crime as far reaching as the notorious Gambino family in New York.
Listen, don't you think these strip club going happenings kind of tend to go with those kind of people? I'm not saying all strip clubs have crime and
Ties to organized crime?
yeah, but I feel
I think it
yeah.
lends itself to his. Hello, we all watched Sopranos, the Bada Bing, but
Well, I didn't watch Sopranos, but sure.
what in the F tab? First Friends and now Sopranos.
I know. I'll start that after I get through Friends. 10 seasons.
I apologize, listeners. But I'm sure there are some nice family-run stripping establishment families. So I apologize if we have associated you with organized crime. Right?
Now you're sounding like me, apologizing for shit.
Overcompensating. Yeah. Okay. So what I'm saying is, with all the reports of narcotics and prostitution rings, ties to organized crime, clearly Mac was real busy, and add in all of the exotic pets and workouts. I mean, wow.
Mm-hmm.
So with all of Mac's criminal associations, the investigation into his murder went cold, which I feel like is not uncommon if organized crime is involved, unless the FBI gets on the case, because that's scary shit for your local detective to be looking into.
Right.
So years passed and the clubs stayed open and Mike Woods collected more money, but not all of the profits because he had acquired a new business partner, a man named Dave Amos, who was actually known around the clubs as English Dave. English Dave was someone Mike Woods had hired amidst the growing tensions between him and Big Mac. He actually hired him to be his bodyguard while he was at the club at the same time as Mac. And in addition to guarding his body, he considered English Dave a person he could confide in. What he mostly confided in him was that Big Mac was a big dick, and he was scared AF of him. He said Big Mac had threatened to have his daughters raped, which he had understandably found upsetting. And so he was just wondering if Dave thought he could, off Mac. Well, Dave said, sure, buddy. But he didn't do it himself. He asked a kind of hanger-arounder guy at the clubs named John Sheridan if he could find someone to have Mac offed. And John said, sure, for a price, naturally.
Mm-hmm.
But John was not able to find anyone to pull it off. So after a while of being really pressured by English Dave, he went and got himself a machine gun and hid in the bushes all by his lonesome and waited until Mac's limo pulled up to the gate. After unloading a whole lot of ammunition, John Sheridan then ditched the gun somewhere never to be found, and then he went about his life and was never really suspected of having any involvement in Big Mac's murder. He had gotten away with it and pocketed around $20,000. Following the murder, the business between English Dave and Mike Woods had not remained friendly, despite Mac no longer being a factor.
Mm-hmm.
Dave suspected Mike of embezzling from the clubs, and he threatened to take legal action against him. And there was some sort of bitter power struggle between the two men. By the way, there ended up actually being some sort of tax evasion and money laundering investigation happening because anybody could see more money was coming in than being documented. When Mac was still alive, actually, he had a habit of bragging about how dumb the IRS was for not catching on to his financials.
Oh, no.
He only claimed to make $40,000 a year.
Okay.
That's less than smart. I think the IRS is very smart. I like to say it a lot.
We do. That's why we are very good at what we do and documenting everything that
every damn thing. Right. Okay. So anyways, that whole part about unpaid taxes is boring and messy, but just, FYI. The part that is not boring and is just fascinating to me is that as if being owners of none other than the Jet Strip wasn't enough, English Dave and Mike Woods got themselves in the Hollywood business. It just goes to show you everybody wants to be a movie star.
It's true.
Mike Woods produced 2 movies starring English Dave. One was about an organized crime group, and there's a rat or a flip amongst them. You would know these terms if you would watch the damn Sopranos.
Is they called a mole? That's what they call it sometimes too, right?
Not really.
That's what they call it in Survivor.
That's what but we're talking about organized crime.
Okay.
Okay.
I watched Survivor.
Okay. So the movie is called Flipping. And the second movie is about a heroic strip club owner who fights to gain control back of his clubs, called The Takeover. Okay. Pretty bananas, right?
Yes.
Sound familiar?
It's kind of like those people that write, that one lady that wrote these like murder books and then she offed her husband. Or the OJ book, like, what if I did it? This is how I would have done it.
Never put it in writing. I don't even talk shit via text. Okay.
Right.
Never put it in writing. People. Well, 10 years went by. Mike and Dave are off, movie making, running the clubs, living La Vida Loca. And John Sheridan was not. And he started to feel some kind of way about committing the murder. John had watched English Dave and Mike Woods flaunt the wealth that he felt was kind of all due to the assassination that he had done. And yet, John, not so wealthy. So John's now a bit of a bitter Betty and had found himself involved in criminal activities. Those criminal activities led him to cultivate a relationship with some detectives because he had been busted for things like small-time drug dealings, which led him to become an informant so he would receive leniency.
Smart.
The bananas thing is none of John's criminal past had anything to do with him wanting to tell detectives that he was the shooter in the Big Mac murder.
Oof.
He was an informant in Ventura County, where Tab and I have both resided, at this time, which is a couple hours from Orange County.
Yeah.
So when he would have his informant chats with the detective he worked with, he kept dropping hints that he knew something about Big Mac, who the detective knew nothing about in Ventura.
Yeah, he's like, I don't like, that's not even my jurisdiction, dude. Like, I just know how this stuff works. I feel like they're like, if it's not mine, it's not mine, unless you get some real good cop. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he kept dropping hints, and after a while, the Ventura County detective was like, okay, finally, I'll bite.
Yeah.
Tell me. Well, according to the detective who John spilled the beans to, he was shocked and not able to promise John immunity or really, much.
Mm-hmm.
What he did do was get John Sheridan to sit down with an Orange County detective familiar with the case and ask John to wear a wire and take down his accomplices. What he did do was ask John Sheridan to sit down with an Orange County detective familiar with the case who asked John to wear a wire to help take down his accomplices. John Sheridan wore a wire for months. He went back to work at the clubs and asked English Dave for more money for the hit. Apparently, he was paid but not given as much as earlier promised. So he had become a bit of a nag. And finally, English Dave paid him, and that was what investigators had been waiting for. So they brought in English Dave. But who they really wanted was Mike Woods. So when they got English Dave down to the station, they had John Sheridan explain to him, surprise, I've been wearing a wire. So you, Sir Dave, are fazucked. And if you want to be less fazucked, you are going to need to wear a wire too while you conversate with Mike Woods. In other words, Dave, you're going to be a rat. We know you know how it works because you made a movie about it.
Yeah.
We all watched it. Great flick, right? So Dave is like, I'm so flattered. You all are so nice. It was a good movie, right? Okay, I just made that up. But he did agree to wear the wire. So, and the meeting between him and Mike Woods all went down at none other than Jerry's Deli. Famous deli in Southern California. So delicious.
I don't think they exist anymore.
There's still a Jerry's Deli in Studio City.
Okay, maybe one. But
that's kind of the famous
one closed.
Oh.
Okay.
So the conversation between English Dave and Mike Woods at Jerry's Deli went like this. English Dave told Mike Woods that John Sheridan had been coming around asking for money. And Mike Woods said, don't pay him anything because it will look like an admission of guilt. He also asked Dave, what did John end up doing with the murder weapon? And Dave said, forget about it. He got rid of it. The convo was enough to get Mike Woods arrested and charged. So English Dave took a plea deal, and so did John Sheridan, but there was a bit of a speed bump in regards to hashing it out. It came into play at Mike Woods' trial. You see, the prosecution was in no hurry to finalize his plea deal because Mike Woods' defense team alleges that as soon as they did, when John Sheridan testified, he would not be able to assert his Fifth Amendment right to implicate himself. So they wanted him as basically their only witness. They were interested in calling him to the stand without him being able to plead the fifth because they wanted to question John Sheridan extra and put some doubt before the jury that Mike Woods was the person behind the hit. They asked for a mistrial, because the prosecution was holding up John Sheridan's plea deal.
Mm-hmm.
They were not granted a mistrial, and Mike Woods was found guilty and sentenced to 25 to life, and then he later appealed on the same grounds and that his lawyers had asked for the mistrial, which I actually think is true. But at the same time, I don't really care because I think he's guilty.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they shouldn't be able to hold up a plea deal, right? That doesn't seem like fair justice.
Right.
So Mike Woods ended up serving less than 20 years.
Wow.
But I'm not sure now that he's no longer a California inmate. I'm not exactly sure where he is.
Where he is. What is he doing? He's back on the strip club trail.
I doubt it. I imagine I think he's living somewhere quietly. I did all speculation though.
Yeah.
As far as English Dave and John Sheridan, they both took plea deals and were paroled in less than 10 years. And so that deal taking did work out for them.
Right. It usually does. Listen, I think
you got to talk early. You really kind of do, right?
Earlier the better.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot report on how life is treating them today because I don't know, but let's hope they are into like gardening and other harmless hobbies that don't involve bad movie making and contract killing because they are amongst us in society.
Yeah. My gosh.
A real sad update on the case is that when I was researching this, I learned about Big Mac's son, Big Mike. Big Mike was 7 feet tall and 365 pounds.
Oh.
He died at the age of 41 of a heart attack. There was a huge outpouring of love for him. I guess he was real well known in the tattoo community.
Yeah. Heart attack at 41?
Well, I feel like, 7 feet tall, 365 pounds.
Yeah, maybe he's eating too much.
Well, I don't know. He was not. He was a large man, but he didn't look really particularly overweight. I don't know. I don't know what's going on with that. Anyways, okay. I saw an interview with the detective who said on one of his trips to Mac's house after his death, obviously, he found Big Mike and a friend up there with an excavator doing some excavating. Mm-hmm. Mike told him that this man wanted him to know where his daddy had buried some things he would be wanting. Apparently, Mac had buried treasure.
Money?
Yeah, well, yeah. Your guess is as good as mine. He buried treasure in the ground pipes, or what was made to look like pipes.
That's really smart.
And if it wasn't for this man, Big Mike would have never known about it. Now, Mike never told the detective. He didn't hide that they were, what they were digging for, but he never told the detective what they found, and I can't blame him really. So we'll never know, but I just found that real interesting. Mm-hmm. The house on Carbon Canyon Road is still there. Mac's original property has been subdivided, so the part with the house is smaller, but it's still quite a few acres and valued around $2.5 million if it was for sale, but it's not. Big Mac's former fiancée, Terry, is still around. She wrote a book about her life and time with Big Mac called 6200 Carbon Canyon Road, My Life as a Penthouse Pet. I read it. It was fascinating. There is a lot more in there about her life story than her time with Big Mac, actually.
Okay.
Miss Terry is actually a hell of a survivor, a disco biscuit of sorts. And I love that she looks like she should be a school principal or just something real friendly. Work at a flower shop, maybe. I don't know. Okay. At least that's, that's her profile picture and what she looks like when she gives interviews. But the background of her social media is all of her racy photos
from back in the day.
Penthouse. Yeah.
She's still living it up like that.
Yeah.
She's like,
yeah. From her youth. She owns it. Me. Listen, no shame in your game, Terry. She owns it. Girl. I love it.
Listen, okay. My Facebook page photo is from a few years ago too. And I look at it sometimes and I'm like, Man, my eyelids looked good there. I think I'll just keep that one. Just keep that one up there.
Just keep that one for a minute. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, there are interviews with Terry where the domestic abuse she experiences are not touched on at all.
Mhm.
You know, she just speaks fondly of Max. She speaks of him as the love of her life. But in the book, she explains her feelings a little more. She gets a little deeper.
It's kind of
You
like
know, domestic
Patreon.
abuse is complicated and it involves a lot of feelings, you know, for all
Yeah.
different kinds of people. So I just wish her well.
Listen, there was somebody at CrimeCon that was in a domestic abuse situation. It was like her last resort was going, and finding somebody there. And so it is very important to, if you are in a domestic abuse situation, it can be very scary. It is very scary. It's not can be, it is. And to find somebody that can help you to get out swiftly and safely. And there are people out there. So if you are in a situation where I know we have listeners that are, so, you can reach out to us. We can find somebody for you also. Just saying.
Yes.
Everybody needs somebody.
Everybody needs somebody at some point. No shame. Okay, well, that's it.
Wow. That is a nutso case, and this guy is out. I really would like to know what he's up to these days. He's got to be old.
I believe he is late 70s, possibly 80 ish.
All right. Well, thank you for that one, Gretch. If you guys have not checked out our Patreon or our bonus Clink Clink Club, please do so. We give an extra episode on Thursdays. Also, by the way, I did figure out how to do it on Spotify. There is a way. And you just go to our bonus content on Spotify. You will see it. It's like Housewives of True Crime bonus content, and you can add that to your feed right there. So if you didn't want to go and click on to another app like Patreon, you can do that. And if you listen on Apple, then it's just Clink Clink Club. You do, however, if you are on Patreon, get the opportunity to have more. Like you can join the VIP club, which I send out sweatshirts or different kinds of swag. And there's also a sticker club. So that's if you want to make the extra effort, go to Patreon. Also, you get a little bit more of us. You get like us chatting with you in the chats. And then 5 Crimes, don't forget, you guys, we have a awesome lotions and potions is what Gretchen calls them. But the hair serum, it's called Scandalous Scalp, will help your hair grow. It's amazing. We use it every day. And the sugar scrub in the shower, it's like, it is
Heaven.
It's heaven. It really
Heaven.
is. It is like, I cannot, if you have good hair, because I think good hair is I've been trying for good hair for so many years. So the fact that we developed this is like, it's really truly a miracle. But second on that, it's called Smooth Criminal.
Smooth Criminal.
Oh my gosh. I put it actually acts like lotion. It really seals in the moisture, even though you're in the shower. And I put it all over my face, on my neck. It's just so delicious. So that's my second favorite. And then my third favorite is Illegal Glow. Perfection. So anyways, that's a little plug for our 5 Crimes. Go to fivecrimes.com and you will see it all. And I think that's it for today. So thanks, Gretchy Poo.
Thank you.
Clink, clink.
Clink, clink.